Millionaire sees homeless man feeding his lost daughter. Her words destroy him. Richard Harding, multimillionaire, a name synonymous with success, stared out from his penthouse window. Central Park, a green and gold tapestry far below. Board meetings, quarterly reports, deals worth millions. That was his life. But behind the tailored suits and power lunches was a ghost, Claire, his wife, gone 5 years now in a car accident that ripped a hole in his soul. This November afternoon felt particularly bleak. The Bentley, a symbol of his success, carried him not to a skyscraper, but downtown to a soup kitchen. Claire used to volunteer here. He hadn't been back since she. He watched, detached at first. The faces, etched with hardship, were a world away from his. Then he saw him, a kid, maybe 10, sharing his meager bowl with a stray, scruffy mutt. The boy's eyes, though, were old, knowing. He called out, "Thanks, Dad," to a man disheveled, unshaven, who smiled back wearily. But it was what happened next that stopped Richard's breath. The man pulled out a journal, worn leather, and offered it to the boy. "Write something down, Alex," he mumbled, his voice raspy. Richard, drawn in despite himself, saw his chance. He pulled out a crisp $100 bill. "Here, son," he said, his voice rough. "Get yourself something nice." The boy, Alex, looked at him, then at the bill. "My dad says we don't take handouts," he said, his voice clear, unwavering. Intrigued, Richard pressed, "What's that book?" "It was my mom's," Alex said, clutching it tighter. "She used to write in it all the time." Richard's heart hammered. "What was your mother's name, son?" Alex hesitated, then whispered, "Claire." Then, world tilted. Claire? Impossible. He remembered vaguely Claire mentioning a young, troubled mother she was trying to help years ago. Could this be? "She always told me stories," Alex continued, his eyes searching Richard's. "About a fancy man named Richard, wore shiny shoes, never had time for her." A punch to the gut. That was him. The guilt, a tidal wave, threatened to drown him. He'd been so absorbed in his world. He'd been blind. What had Claire been doing? What life had she kept hidden? He had to know more. But then a woman approached, calling, "Alex, Mikey's waiting to take you home." Uncle Mikey? Who the hell was Uncle Mikey? His head swam. Everything he thought he knew about Claire, about his own life, was crumbling around him. He had to find out who this boy really was, what secrets Claire took to her grave. And who was this Uncle Mikey? Ei, antes de continuarmos com essa história incrível, preciso te fazer alerta importante. Muitos inscritos têm relatado que o YouTube removeu suas inscrições sem aviso. Dá só uma conferida rápida no botão vermelho aí embaixo para garantir que você ainda está inscrito no canal. Não quero que você perca nenhum conteúdo exclusivo que vem por aí. E já que você está aí, deixa aquele like poderoso que me ajuda muito com o algoritmo. Ah, e me conta nos comentários, de qual cidade você está assistindo? Adoro conhecer cada pessoa incrível que faz parte dessa comunidade. Sua participação faz toda a diferença. Vamos interagir. He had to find out who this boy really was, what secrets Claire took to her grave. And who was this Uncle Mikey? Richard practically stumbled after Alex and the woman. Mikey was waiting by a beat-up station wagon, the kind your grandma drove. Alex ran to him, a gap-toothed grin splitting his face. Uncle Mikey, look what Dad gave me." He held up the worn leather journal. Mikey, a burly guy with kind eyes, ruffled Alex's hair. "Hey, champ, glad to see you're still writing in that thing." He glanced at the unshaven man, a silent understanding passing between them. Richard couldn't breathe. He needed answers. Now. He strode up to Mikey, pulling out his wallet. "Look, I need to talk to you about. Claire, he said, his voice tight. I was her husband. Mikey's eyes narrowed. You're Richard Harding? He sized Richard up, disgust written all over his face. Claire never wanted you knowing about Alex. You were too busy making money. I didn't know, Richard stammered, the guilt eating him alive. Please just tell me, how did this happen? Mikey sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's a long story, Harding. One you probably don't deserve to hear. He looked at Alex, then back at Richard. All right, get in the car. We'll talk. The drive was a blur. Mikey pulled into a small, run-down apartment complex. This wasn't the life Claire deserved. This wasn't the life any of them deserved. Inside, the apartment was cramped but clean, filled with photos of Claire and Alex. Richard felt a lump form in his throat. Claire was pregnant when you two split, Mikey started, his voice flat. She didn't want your money, Harding. She just wanted you to be there, but you were always too busy. Then she got sick. Richard sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Sick? What was? Hearing. Cancer, Mikey said, the word hanging heavy in the air. She fought it for years. Alex saw her through it all. He was her rock. Richard looked at Alex, drawing in Claire's journal, and realized he'd missed it all. He'd missed everything that mattered. That's when she walked in, a woman stunningly beautiful, with Claire's eyes, but younger, alive. Richard stared, his heart stopping. Claire? He whispered, disbelieving. She looked at him, a mixture of sadness and anger in her eyes. Hello, Richard. Long time no see. But Claire was dead. He saw the wrecked car. He identified the body. He arranged the funeral. But I saw you die, he choked out, his voice trembling. The woman, Claire, shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. Did you, Richard? Or did you see what they wanted you to see? Mikey stepped forward, placing a protective arm around her. It's time he knew, Claire. He deserves to know the truth, no matter how ugly it is. The truth? Richard repeated, his mind reeling. What truth? Claire took a deep breath, her eyes locking with Richard's. The truth. Richard, is that I'm not Claire. I'm her twin sister, Sarah. And Claire is very much alive. And she's been protecting Alex from you for a very good reason. The room spun. Twin sister? Alive? Protecting Alex? What in God's name was going on? What reason could be so important that she'd fake her own death? Sarah stepped closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Claire ran away, Richard. She ran away because she found out who you really are, what you really do. She paused, letting her words sink in. She found out about the illegal arms dealing, Richard, the money laundering. She saw the kind of monster you were becoming. And she knew you'd never let her leave. So we faked her death. And we've been hiding ever since. Richard felt the blood drain from his face. Arms dealing? Money laundering? This couldn't be true. But looking into Sarah's eyes, he knew it was. He was a monster, and his own wife was terrified of him. Where was Claire now? Was she safe? And what would he do now that his carefully constructed world had crumbled to dust? Richard felt the blood drain from his face. Arms dealing? Money laundering? This couldn't be true. But looking into Sarah's eyes, he knew it was. He was a monster, and his own wife was terrified of him. Where was Claire now? Was she safe? And what would he do now that his carefully constructed world had crumbled to dust? Where is she? Richard managed to croak out, his voice barely a whisper. Is she okay? Sarah's expression softened slightly. She's safe. Somewhere you'll never find her. I need to see her, Richard pleaded. I need to. Explain what? Explain what, Richard? How you ruined her life? How you forced her to abandon everything she knew and loved? Sarah's voice was sharp, unforgiving. Mikey stepped in again, his hand still protectively on Sarah's shoulder. Leave it, Sarah. He doesn't deserve to know anything. Suddenly, Alex piped up, his small voice cutting through the tension. Mommy always said you were a bad man, Richard. She said you were dangerous. Richard's heart shattered. Even his own son. His son saw him as a villain. He couldn't take it anymore. He stumbled back, reaching for the door, needing to escape, to breathe, to make sense of the chaos that had become his life. But as he reached for the handle, the door burst open, slamming against the wall with a deafening crash. Standing in the doorway was Claire. But this wasn't the Claire he remembered, the Claire he loved. This Claire was different, harder, colder, and she was holding a gun. "Hello, Richard," she said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. "It's time to end this." Richard stared at her, paralyzed with shock. "Claire, what are you doing?" She didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on him, her hands steady on the weapon. "Mommy, no!" Alex screamed, running towards her. Mikey grabbed Alex, pulling him back. "Stay back, kid!" Sarah, her face pale with fear, whispered, "Claire, what are you doing? This isn't you." But Claire didn't seem to hear them. Her gaze remained locked on Richard, her finger tightening on the trigger. "Claire, please," Richard begged, his voice trembling. "Don't do this. Let's talk." "There's nothing to talk about, Richard," she said, her voice like ice. "You destroyed my life. You made me run, made me live in fear. And now you're going to pay." And then, just as she was about to pull the trigger, another voice shattered the silence. "Claire, don't!" Everyone turned towards the sound. Standing in the hallway, behind Claire, was Richard. Another Richard. Identical. The same tailored suit, the same shiny shoes, the same haunted look in his eyes. "What the hell?" Mikey stammered, his jaw dropping. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Alex, confused and terrified, clung to Mikey's leg. The two Richards stared at each other, a silent battle raging between them. Who are you?" the first Richard whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. The second Richard, the one in the hallway, simply smiled, a chilling, predatory smile. "I'm you, Richard," he said, his voice smooth and menacing. "But I'm also the one you tried to forget, the one you buried deep inside, the one who does the dirty work, the one who makes sure the trains run on time. I'm the real Richard Harding." He took a step forward, his eyes never leaving the first Richard's. "And I'm here to take back what's mine." Claire lowered the gun, her face a mask of confusion. She looked from one Richard to the other, her mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. Who is this?" she asked, her voice barely audible. The second Richard ignored her, his focus solely on the first Richard. "You thought you could escape me, Richard," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You thought you could live a normal life? You were wrong. We are one and the same, and I won't let you ruin everything I've worked for." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a gun of his own. "Goodbye, Richard," he said, his finger tightening on the trigger. "It's been interesting." And then the room erupted in gunfire. And then the room erupted in gunfire. Chaos. Screams. Richard watched, frozen as Claire's doppelganger, this thing, unleashed a hail of bullets. Claire, Sarah, they dove for cover, Mikey shielding Alex with his body. He felt a searing pain in his shoulder, then another in his leg. He was going down, his vision blurred, the world tilting. He saw Claire, his Claire, the one he loved, the one he lost, her face contorted with fear and something else. Pity? Everything went black, then nothing, until he woke up. Not in the cramped apartment, not in a hospital bed. He was in his penthouse, his bed. Sunlight streamed through the window, Central Park a perfect green rectangle below. Birds chirped. A gentle breeze rustled the curtains. He sat up, disoriented. His shoulder didn't hurt. Neither did his leg. He looked down. No blood, no bullet holes. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, his head swimming. Was it a dream? A nightmare? He stumbled into the bathroom, catching his reflection in the mirror. He looked the same. But something was different. Something in his eyes. He splashed water on his face, trying to shake off the fog. He had to know. He grabbed his phone, scrolling through his contacts. Claire. He hesitated, his finger hovering over the call button. What would he say? He dialed. It rang and rang and rang. Then a voice, a familiar voice. Hello, Claire? He whispered, his voice cracking. Silence. Richard, need to see you. We need to talk. Everything's changed. Another pause. There's nothing to talk about, Richard. I've moved on. Please, Claire, just 5 minutes, please. He heard her sigh. Fine. Meet me. Meet me at Bethesda Terrace in the park, noon. And Richard, come alone. He hung up, his heart pounding. He had a second chance. He could fix this. He would fix this. He showered, shaved, dressed in his best suit. He wanted to make a good impression. He wanted her to see that he was different. He arrived at Bethesda Terrace. Early, his anxiety building with each passing minute. He scanned the crowd, searching for her face. And then he saw her. Standing by the fountain, her back to him. Her hair was shorter, darker. She looked older, but it was her. He took a deep breath and approached her. Claire? She turned around and he stopped dead in his tracks. It wasn't Claire. It was his mother, but not the sweet, kind, elderly woman he remembered. This woman was younger, stronger, and she was holding a gun. Hello, Richard, she said, her voice cold and hard. We need to talk. Hello, Richard, she said, her voice cold and hard. We need to talk. He stared at her, his mind blank. His mother? Holding a gun? This had to be some kind of elaborate joke. A cruel, twisted game. Mom, he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. What's going on? Her eyes, usually filled with warmth and love, were now like chips of ice. Don't mom me, Richard. You haven't called me that in years. Not since you became this. She gestured at his expensive suit with the gun. I don't understand, he said, his head throbbing. What are you talking about? Oh, I think you do, she said, a bitter smile playing on her lips. You think you can just waltz back into our lives after all this time? After what you've done? What I've done? He felt a wave of nausea wash over him. What was happening? Don't play coy with me, Richard. I know everything. She took a step closer, the gun steady in her hand. I know about Claire. I know about Alex. And I know about the things you've been doing. The dirty secrets you thought you could keep hidden. Claire told you? He asked, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. Maybe this wasn't so bad. Maybe he could explain. Her laughter was sharp and brittle. Claire? Claire doesn't know anything. She's been protected, kept safe from you. Then how? I've been watching you, Richard, she said, her voice low and menacing. For a long time, I've seen what you've become, the monster you are. He wanted to argue, to deny it, but he knew she was right. He was a monster. He'd let greed and power consume him. I can change, he pleaded, his voice trembling. I swear I can change. Just give me a chance. She shook her head, her eyes filled with pity. It's too late for that, Richard. You're too far gone. And then she said the words that shattered everything he thought he knew. I'm not your mother, Richard. The world tilted on its axis. He stared at her, his mind refusing to accept what he was hearing. What are you saying? She sighed, her expression softening slightly. Your mother died a long time ago, Richard. When you were just a boy. He shook his head, tears welling up in his eyes. No, that's not true. I remember her. I remember her reading me stories. I remember. Those are just memories, Richard, she said gently. Memories that were implanted, fabricated. Implanted? Fabricated? By who? She hesitated, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. By them, Richard, the same people who made you who you are today. Them? Who are them? He was spiraling, lost in a sea of confusion and disbelief. They're the ones who control you, Richard, she said, her voice barely audible. The ones who have been pulling the strings all along. They took you when your mother died and made you into their weapon, a ruthless, heartless machine. No, he whispered, his voice breaking. That's not true. That can't be true. It is, Richard, and I'm here to stop them. She raised the gun, her hand steady. But if you're not my mother, he stammered, then who are you? A single tear rolled down her cheek. I'm the one who's supposed to kill you. She looked directly into Richard's eyes with her new, yet all too familiar gaze. And I'm your sister, Rose. And I'm your sister, Rose. Sister? Rose? His head swam. More siblings? What was this? Some twisted family reunion orchestrated by them? I don't have a sister, he stammered, his voice cracking. My mother lied, Rose finished, her voice devoid of emotion. They all lied. It's what they do. She took a step closer, the gun unwavering. The Bethesda fountain gurgled behind her, the tourists oblivious to the drama unfolding. I'm here to clean up their mess, Richard, she said. You were a loose end, a liability. ... He wanted to run, to scream, to disappear, but he was frozen, paralyzed by the sheer absurdity of it all. But why? He managed to croak out. Why kill me? What did I do? You were getting too close to the truth, she said. You were starting to remember. They can't risk that. He blinked, a flicker of something, a memory, surfacing in his mind. A lab, white coats, needles. They manipulated me? He whispered, the realization dawning. Rose nodded. Her eyes filled with a strange mixture of pity and disgust. They took you, Richard. They erased your past and programmed you to be exactly what they wanted. A weapon, a puppet. Suddenly a voice boomed from behind them. Rose, stand down! A man emerged from the crowd. Tall, imposing, with a face like granite. He wore a dark suit and an even darker expression. Who are you? Richard asked, his voice trembling. The man ignored him, his gaze fixed on Rose. Rose, you know the protocol, he said, his voice like thunder. Stand down and let me handle this. Rose shook her head, her jaw set. I can't. Father, she said, her voice resolute. I won't. Father? Richard's mind imploded. This wasn't just a conspiracy. It was a freaking soap opera. The man, his father, sighed, a look of disappointment on his face. You always were too sentimental, Rose, he said. That's why I never trusted you with the important work. He reached into his coat, pulling out a gun of his own. I'm sorry it has to be this way, sweetheart, he said. But you leave me no choice. Rose raised her gun, her finger tightening on the trigger. But before either of them could fire, something incredible happened. The ground beneath them began to shake. Not a tremor, not a rumble, a full-blown earthquake. The Bethesda fountain cracked, water spewing everywhere. People screamed and ran in terror. And then, from the depths of the earth, something emerged. Something huge, something monstrous. A creature of pure shadow, with eyes that burned like hellfire. It roared, a sound that shattered the very air around them. And then it spoke. In a voice that echoed through the park, a voice that resonated in Richard's very soul. Richard, it is time. Richard felt a jolt of recognition, a surge of power coursing through his veins. He knew that voice. He remembered that voice. And then he knew everything. He wasn't just a pawn. He wasn't just a weapon. He was something much, much more. He was the key. And they, his father, his sister, them all, they were never really in control. He was. All along. Richard, it is time. Time for what? His mind raced. Time to run? Time to die? Then it hit him. Not run. Not die. Something else. He looked. At his father, his sister, the horrified faces of the tourists. They were looking at him. Not with fear, not with anger, but with awe. He closed his eyes, focusing on the voice, the power surging through him. It wasn't just a voice. It was a command, a key. He opened his eyes. The creature of shadow was still there, towering over them, its eyes burning into his. And then Richard understood. He raised his hand. The creature bowed its head. His father gasped. Rose stared, her mouth agape. "What are you doing?" his father stammered. Richard didn't answer. He focused on the creature, on the power flowing through him. He felt it, a force he never knew he possessed, a destiny he was only now realizing. He pointed, not at his father, not at Rose, at the Bethesda fountain. The creature roared, its shadow tentacles lashing out. The fountain shattered, stone exploding into the air. But it wasn't just stone. Something else was there, buried beneath the fountain. Something dark and ancient. The earth trembled violently. The screams of the crowd were deafening. And then it rose, a monolith of obsidian, pulsating with an unholy energy. Symbols were etched into its surface, symbols Richard recognized, symbols that resonated with the voice in his head. His father fell to his knees, his face contorted with terror. "No, it can't be," he whispered. Rose raised her gun, but her hand was shaking too violently to aim. Richard walked towards the monolith, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. He reached out and touched its surface. And then everything changed. The monolith glowed with a blinding light. The creature of shadow vanished. The earthquake stopped. And Richard was gone. In his place stood something else. A being of pure energy, its form shimmering and indistinct. It was Richard, but not Richard. Something more. Something other. It looked at his father, at Rose, at the terrified faces of the crowd. And then it spoke. But it wasn't Richard's voice. It was something ancient, something powerful, something inhuman. "You failed," it said, its voice echoing through the park. "You thought you could control me. You were wrong." His father screamed. Rose fainted. The being turned its attention to the monolith. It raised its hand, and the monolith began to glow even brighter. And then the world went white. When the light faded, everything was different. The park was gone. The city was gone. Everything was gone, except for the being and the monolith. It stood alone in a vast, empty void. And then it smiled. A smile that was not human, a smile that promised something terrible. "Now the real work begins," it said. And from the monolith, something emerged, something that would change everything. Claire. But it wasn't the Claire he knew. This Claire had eyes that glow with the same unholy light as the being. And she was smiling too. "Welcome home, Richard," she said. "We've been waiting for you." And then another figure stepped out of the monolith. Alex. But Alex was no longer a child. He was a young man, tall and strong, with the same glowing eyes. And he was holding something in his hand. A gun, pointed directly at the being. "Sorry, Dad," Alex said, his voice cold and emotionless. "But it's time for you to go." And then he pulled the trigger. "Sorry, Dad," Alex said, his voice cold and emotionless. "But it's time for you to go." And then he pulled the trigger. A deafening roar. Not from the gun. From everywhere. The monolith vibrated. Claire screamed. But the bullet? It didn't hit the being. It stopped. Mid-air. Suspended. Alex's face twisted in confusion. He fired again and again. The bullets hung there, shimmering, inches from the being's chest. Then smiled. "Fool," the being boomed, its voice shaking the void. "Did you really think you could kill yourself?" Alex stumbled back, his eyes wide with horror. What did you say?" The being extended a hand, its energy tendrils snaking out, wrapping around Alex. "You are a part of me, Alex," the being whispered. "Always have been, always will be. You are my failsafe." Alex struggled, but it was no use. The energy was consuming him, his body glowing with the same unholy light. Claire watched, paralyzed, tears streaming down her face. "No, Alex, stop!" But the being just laughed. A cruel, heartless sound. "Soon we will be one," it said. "And then nothing can stop us." And then it happened. A blinding flash. A shockwave. That ripped through the void. The being screamed. Its energy tendrils snapped. Alex was thrown clear, landing hard on the... Well, there was no ground. He just floated, unconscious. The being staggered, clutching its chest. A wound. A real wound. "Impossible!" it roared. "How?" Standing behind it, bathed in an ethereal glow, was another figure. Richard. But not the Richard who had become the being. This was the real Richard. The Richard before the monolith, before the creature of shadow, before ordinary. A pen. An old, worn-out pen. "You forgot about one thing," Richard said, his voice clear and strong. "You forgot about her." He raised the pen, and then everything went black. Again. When I woke, I was back in the apartment. The crummy little apartment. Sarah was there, Mikey was there, and Alex. Alex was asleep on the couch, looking like a normal kid again. What happened?" I asked, my head pounding. Sarah looked at me, her eyes filled with relief and something else. "Fear?" "It's over," she said. "It's finally over." But how?" She hesitated, then looked at Mikey. He nodded. "It's time you knew the truth, Richard," Mikey said, his voice grave. "The whole truth." He took a deep breath. "Claire never really ran away from you," he said. "She was taken." "Taken? By whom?" My head was spinning. "By them," Mikey said, echoing my thoughts. "The same people who took you. The same people who turned you into what you were." "But why?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why take her? Why take me?" Sarah stepped forward, her eyes locking with mine. Because. Richard, she said, her voice barely a whisper. You weren't just married to Claire. You were chosen, both of you. Chosen? Chosen for what? You were chosen, Sarah continued, because you were both special. Special? What did she mean by that? Was I some kind of super soldier? An alien hybrid? Sarah took my hand, her touch surprisingly gentle. You were chosen because you were both descendants of the old ones, Richard, she said. The ones who built the monoliths. The ones who control the shadows. My head swam. Descendants of what? And Claire? Sarah said, her voice cracking. Claire was the key. The key to what? I wanted to scream. I needed answers, and I needed them now. But then Sarah dropped the bombshell. And Alex, she said, her voice barely audible. Alex isn't just Claire's son. He's your son, from the future, Richard. I stared at her, my mind completely blank. My son? From the future? My son? From the future? I looked at Sarah, then at Mikey. They both looked dead serious. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't some crazy dream. This was reality. Or whatever passed. For reality in my life. But how is that even possible? I stammered. Mikey sighed. Time travel, messing with the timelines. The old ones were masters of it, Richard. They could do things we can't even imagine. Sarah nodded. That's why they needed you, Richard. Your DNA, Claire's DNA. It was the key to stabilizing the timeline, to making Alex possible. Alex, my son, from the future. It still didn't make any sense. So, if Alex is my son, why is he trying to kill me? I asked. Sarah's face clouded over. That's complicated, Richard. The timeline is fractured. There are different versions of Alex out there. Some good, some not so good. The one we met, he was one of the bad ones? Mikey nodded grimly. Yeah, he was controlled by the old ones, twisted by their influence. He thought he was doing the right thing, protecting the timeline, but he was just a puppet. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process everything. This was too much, way too much. But then I noticed something. Something was wrong. Sarah, she was acting weird. She kept glancing. At the door, fidgeting with her hands. She was hiding something. Sarah, what's wrong? I asked, my voice low. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. There's something else you need to know, Richard. My heart sank. What now? Claire, she's not who you think she is. I stared at her, my mind blank. What are you talking about? She's my wife. Sarah shook her head sadly. No, Richard, she's not. Claire is a construct, a creation of the old ones. She was designed to manipulate you, to guide you down a certain path. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. A construct? My Claire? The woman I loved? No, that's not true, I whispered. I know Claire. I know her heart. She's real. But even as I said the words, I knew it wasn't true. There were too many inconsistencies, too many unanswered questions. Sarah stepped closer, her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Richard. I wish it wasn't true. But it is. Claire was never real. She was just a tool. And then the bombshell. And you, Richard. You're not Richard Harding. You're a clone designed to replace the real one once he figured things out. The real Richard Harding died years ago after realizing the truth of the old ones. His death covered up and you being implanted into the world as him, so that one day you could be controlled and activated. The room started to spin. My head pounded. I couldn't breathe. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. My life, my love, my very identity, all fabricated. I was nothing. just a puppet, a clone. And then the door burst open. The door crashed. Open and nothing. Just light, blinding light. Then voices, distant, muffled. Is he gone? I think so. The monolith is inert. What about Alex? Unconscious, but alive. He'll be different. Then, darkness. I woke up again. This time, I was in a hospital. Tubes everywhere. A machine beeped rhythmically. Sarah was there, sitting by my bed, asleep. I tried to speak. Nothing. Just a dry, raspy sound. Sarah's eyes fluttered open. She saw me. Her face lit up. "Richard," she whispered. "You're awake." She called for a doctor. Nurses rushed in. They checked my vitals, asked me questions. I couldn't answer. Not yet. Later, when I was stronger, Sarah told me everything. Or at least what she knew. The old ones were gone. The monoliths were inert. The timelines were healing. Alex was alive. Changed, yes, but alive. He was learning. About his past, about his future, about the incredible power he held within. And Claire? She's gone, Richard, Sarah said softly. She was never real to begin with. I closed my eyes. Pain ripped through me. Loss, regret, but also hope. Maybe. A chance to start over. A chance. To be better. I opened my eyes. I looked at Sarah. "What now?" I croaked. She smiled. A small, sad smile. "Now," she said, "we rebuild. We rebuild. Together." I looked out the window. The city stretched before me. Scarred, wounded, but still standing. And somewhere out there, Alex, my son, from the future. He was out there, and I would find him. But as I gaze at the world outside, a chilling thought creeps into my mind. What if everything they told me was a lie? A cruel twist of fate? What if the true nature of the old ones and their monoliths is something far more sinister than I could possibly imagine? And what if Claire, in some distorted form, is still out there, pulling the strings from a realm beyond my comprehension? Is this really the end, or just the beginning of an even greater nightmare? Hey, you made it to the end. But this isn't over. It's just the beginning. Listen up. You need to subscribe to this channel right now. Don't miss out on the next exclusive stories. You won't find them anywhere. Else, smash that like button now. Help feed the algorithm and let us know you want more. This is the moment to show your support. Flood the comments with your reactions. Tell us what you thought of that ending. Share your theories. We need to know. Don't wait another second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this mind-blowing conclusion. Let them in on the secret. Only true fans understand the importance of these actions. Show your love and help us bring you even more incredible stories. Do it now.